I would like to tell you the story of our experiences during the Iranian Revolution in 1979. And before starting, I should just say what the cause of the revolution was: the clash between the political and the religious. And that was the First World War, when Iran and the Shah at that time chose to support the Germans. Now, the Germans then pressurized the Shah to stop supplying oil to the Allies. And oil and fuel is pretty important in a war. So the Allies promptly invaded Iran and arrested the Shah. And they told him, well, you're going for a trip to South Africa where you will not re-emerge. And is there anyone you would recommend to be Shah in your place? So he said, yes, there is my 21-year-old son, and we've been training him. So everybody said, oh, yes, that's fine, then he'll be the Shah in your place. Unfortunately, the young Shah was not a suitable leader in any way, shape, or form, and he was very insecure. He loved Europe, America, Switzerland was his favorite country, and he enjoyed the kind of pleasures of the flesh, etc. So he, after the war, he realized when the price of oil went up that he was actually going to be probably the richest man in the world after some time, biggest disposable income. So he thought, well, I'm the leader. Why don't I make the Iran to be in the top 5 of the military, of economically, and culturally? We shall have all the wonderful things in America and Europe and Switzerland right here in Iran. Tehran will become the Paris of the Middle East. Now, this did not go down well with the religious establishment, who really set out to pull him down after that. And for 15 years, there was this clash, and which was increasing intensity. And after 15 years was just the moment when we arrived in Iran. So, how did this come about for us? I may have said before, but my grandfather was my hero, and he had been a doctor in Africa for 60 years, and we saw him regularly on my way to and from school, and I thought, boy, I would like to be a surgeon like him and work in a hospital, and I would like to work abroad outside of Britain, if possible, at least for some of the time. And my fascination was actually with Islam, which was something that was growing, and I just couldn't put my finger on it. We couldn't understand what the attraction was, and I thought that I would like to spend some years in the Middle East. I'd like to learn Arabic. I'd like to study, go hang out with Muslims, and if possible, correct any misconceptions there were about Christianity. So that was my kind of line. And after a period of time, when I came to hang out with Helen, I was quite nervous, because I thought, how am I going to, what's going to happen if she's not interested? So this was one of the conditions of my proposal was, would you be interested in going to the Middle East? Oh, she said, that's just exactly what I had on my mind, so that isn't a problem. So a year later, we got married and started to prepare to go to the Middle East. I was finishing my surgical training, she was her teaching, and the question was where to go. It could be anywhere in the Muslim world. So we happened to meet a lady who was a nurse in a hospital in Iran, in a Christian mission hospital. And she said to us, oh, we have a desperate need for a surgeon in our hospital just coming up. And our present surgeon, he rebuilt the hospital, he's exhausted, he needs a break. So I said, well, that just about coincides with my final exams and so on. So we checked with our supporters, and they were fine with Iran. And so we set off, and we did know that there was trouble in Iran, and that was for sure. But we thought, well, I'll put my white coat on, I'll work in a hospital that's very well established, been there 100 years. In fact, it started the medical, the practice of modern medicine in southern Iran. So we arrived, and the second night we were there, Helen heard in the middle of the night, she was woken up by this very deep rumbling noise. And I didn't hear it. She asked me what it was. I said, I didn't hear anything. Next night, same. The whole house was shaking. So she asked around, and they said, it's tanks. We lived on one of the main streets of Isfahan, and it was tanks going down the main road. So after that, the demonstrations started, and they got bigger and bigger, and there was a demonstration of 1 million people in Tehran. Imagine 1 million people demonstrating. 2 weeks later, it was 200,000 in our city, a city about the size of maybe Perth or that kind of place, and these guys, they're all men, they're all wearing black shirts. They all had these shirts down to the collars here and to their sleeves, and they were walking 5 abreast. They all raised their hands. They were shouting, "Shah must go! Shah must go! Shah must go!" And so this went on for 5 hours past our house and past the front of the hospital. After that, the demonstrations started to get violent, and people started getting killed. And after that, and eventually there were about 2,000 people killed during this period. And at that time, the curfews, military curfews started. So initially it was 10 o'clock at night, but then it came down to 6 o'clock at night till 6 in the morning. If you were on the street, you would be shot. What happened? All the people went onto their flat roofs and started shouting, "The Shah must go! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! The Shah must go!" The noise was unbelievable. We had our neighbors all around us, and across the city, the noise. And what did the soldiers do? They started shooting to discourage the shouting. Well, of course, they didn't shoot the people. They were just shooting around. And you could actually hear the bullets hitting the walls near us. And it was a very disturbing sound when you were sitting in your house trying to have your supper, trying to play a game or something. And we just had to turn up the radio, turn up the tape recorder to try and reduce all this. So at that time, I was called once in the middle of the night to see a patient, and I put on my white coat, and by 2 o'clock it was all very, very quiet indeed. And I came out of my compound, and I thought I could actually just go down the front of the main street, because there'd be nobody there, and just go in the hospital that way. There was an underground passage, but it was very dusty and dirty and dark. And I thought, well, anyway, I came out of the compound. As soon as I got out there and onto the street, I heard this noise behind me. And I turned, and it was 3 huge military trucks. And they were all armed, like they had a soldier on the top of the cab with a weapon. And I thought this might be it. I've got three options. I'd like to ask you which you would have done. One was to turn around and dash back into the house. That might have, created a reaction. The other one was to run the 200 yards down to the front gate, see if I could do it, beat them that way. Or the other way was just walk. And I don't know whether I was scared or not, but I was scared. But I just walked. I don't know what you would have done, but I just walked. Helen said, "Don't do that again." After this, the strikes started. To push their will, the people started striking, and all the schools and education, and the shops. And for 3 months, every shop was closed. Like you could not buy any food or anything anywhere. They were all barricaded. You wanted something, you had to go around behind and knock on the door and buy something under the counter and show that you were a Khomeini supporter. That was the only way. Then there was electricity blackouts very frequently. Then there was no post and no telephones. We could not contact our family in Britain for 4 months. Until we left, there was no contact with our family. It was shocking. And then there was no fuel. You had, if you went into a fuel station, you had to show a picture of Khomeini and show that you supported him, and then you get fuel. Then when you drove out of the station into the police roadblock, the military roadblock, you'd have to have a picture on your windscreen of the Shah, because your window would be broken if it wasn't. Lastly, there was no paraffin, and this was the worst of them for most of my friends, because they couldn't heat their house, and it was in the middle of winter, and it was incredibly cold, and electricity wasn't there, and that's why they had to leave. No paraffin. So, however, we carried on because we could get hospital supplies, so we were as an institution. And we carried on. We actually carried on as normally as we could. And on Friday, there was a day off. We would, if we could, we'd sort of go off for a picnic outside the city. And so the trouble with that was there were roadblocks on the way. And one of the families, they had 3 or 4 children. And we were going on a picnic, and would you like to come? Yes. And we piled into this van and we set off. And sure enough, we came to a roadblock, and they had these guns and they were pointing at us. And so we stopped, and they said, "Where are you going?" We said, "We're going for a picnic." "A picnic?" "Yes, a picnic." So they checked our van. There were no weapons or anything. They said, "All right, go for your picnic." Then we went on to the next roadblock, and the same thing happened. "Where are you going?" "Picnic." "Picnic?" And yes, picnic. So anyway, we got through that. There were 4 roadblocks to get out of the city. Each time and then we got out of the 4th one, and the lady who was organizing this trip, she suddenly said, "Oh my goodness, I forgot the lunch. I forgot the picnic. Oh, can we do without?" No, you've got to go back and get the food. Got kids here. So we turned around, we went back through those 4 blocks, and we said, they said, "Hello, what are you doing?" We forgot the lunch. We're going to get the picnic." So, good. Anyway, so then next one, we forgot the lunch, so we're going back to get it. Forgot the lunch, got back, got the lunch, and put it in the car. And we set off again. "Hello, where are you going now?" "We've got the lunch now, we're going for a picnic." What? This is You must be crazy. And next, all the way out, we got there, we had the picnic, we had a wonderful time, it was great, and then we had to come back in, and they said, hello, we saw you this morning, didn't we? Yes, we've had the picnic now. And yeah, we've had the picnic, we've had the picnic, we've had the picnic. All the way back. Unbelievable. So there were the funny moments too. At last, Khomeini arrived, and he was met by 2 million people in Tehran. It's a lot of people, 2 million people. And one of the first things he said was, the foreigners must leave. Now, there were 10,000 foreigners there, a lot of all Westerners, and they were running all these institutions and things. There was the largest helicopter base in the world was in Isfahan. We had helicopters, multiple helicopters over our heads for months, and they all left. Every single one left. Only one person, I think, was killed, and I think it was a sort of misunderstanding or something. And but we didn't leave. We stayed there, and we had 3 Christian hospitals in the south of Iran, and one by one we all had problems. One of them, the Iranian chaplain, was murdered in his study by 2 men who came in and stabbed him to death. Another one, there was a hospital strike, and the medical superintendent or director was forced to leave. He packed up, he arranged a flight, he drove to the airport, and when he got there, they said, you don't have an exit permit in your passport. Now, you have to have an exit permit before you leave. We don't know, you might be taking all this money or wealth or jewels or something. He said, I have to leave. This is my flight. This is the last flight that's leaving to this destination. There are no more. Well, you have to go back and get something. I can't go back because of a strike in my hospital. Well, go to Tehran and see. So he said, okay. So he went down, and then he found a side door. The plane was waiting for him. He found a side door. He ran through the door. He ran across the tarmac. And he ran up the stairs. They took the stairs away. The plane took off. That man had been working there for 30 years in Iran. That's the way he had to leave. He had to run. So at last, our hospital, after 3.5 months, we had a strike, and we had a meeting of the foreigners there in the evening, and it was decided that Helen and I should leave, especially as she was 37 weeks pregnant. So next day we started to pack our things. Actually, first thing in the morning, Helen and I always have a cup of tea, and then we read our Bible. And so I read Jeremiah chapter 30. Helen said, don't read Jeremiah again. Look, we've been having this for weeks, this sins and repentance and all the bad things that are going on. There's enough bad news as it is. Surely we can read something else. I said, no, we'll just read Jeremiah. So I read, and it said, God called, I will gather pregnant women, even those actually in labor, and I will bring them home on a smooth path. She said, it doesn't say that. You're making it up. I said, I'm not. It's what it says. Let me have a look. She had a look. Oh, it does. That looks like promise for us. We're going to go home on a smooth path. God spoke to us. And so we packed up that day and we set off and said goodbye to everybody. And then we drove across the city to our friends, the Bayats. Now, the Iranian people are actually very, very hospitable, friendly, great sense of humor, drama, culture. You just can't believe it. And this family had taken us on completely as their part of their family. Like when Helen broke her ankle very badly, she was taken in by them for a whole week, and they sent their daughter to come and cook for me while I was in the hospital. And we used to do so many things together, picnics and such, etc. And we went there and we spent a whole hour with them, and we left in tears to say we hope we see you again. We did come back to Iran later, and we went to their house, and it had been flattened and turned into something else. So we never have done. But anyway, we set off, and at night, and it was 300 miles to Tehran. And on the way, halfway down the road, there's a city, a holy city called Qom. And that's where the mullahs all live, and Khomeini was living there. And they never allow any foreigners to set foot in there. But it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was very quiet, and we thought, there's a big circuitous route around, but we thought, well, let's just go through. We drove right through, and nobody stopped us. We were so tired. We slept on the roadside outside Tehran. We slept under the car, actually. And as dawn came, we set off again. We drove to the airport where the place for the baggage was. And you could load your heavy luggage, not the 20 kilos or something. And this was a Thursday, and it was just about to close. It would have closed in 5 minutes' time. We just got in time, offloaded our baggage. And then we went into the airport, where we went to immigration. And as it happened, we had made a short trip to Pakistan. And so we had exit permits in the passports, but they were for Pakistan. They were out of date, and so we didn't know what was going to happen. We reached there, they looked at them like this, and then like this, and then they said, okay, you can go. And so we went through into the boarding lounge, and we were waiting to board, and suddenly I heard my voice being called. David Lyth, come to the desk. And Helen and I looked at each other. We didn't know what was going to happen. And we had a prayer. I had with me a delivery pack in case the baby came early during the journey. And, it might have happened during the flight. And we just didn't know what was going to happen. So it was a dark moment, and I went forward to the desk, and they had some questions about my hand luggage. It was unimportant. So I came back, and we were okay. We got on the flight. We got back home. Parents were not expecting us. So, thank God, we did get home on a smooth path.